Welcome back. If you joined us for part one, I'm so glad you're here for part two. And if you're just jumping in, you may want to go back and start there. Either way, let's dive in.
Like when I took a step back, I'm like, man, I'm going to have to take a huge pay cut. But what I did is I put a renter in my house, somebody that needed a place to stay that was in between jobs. So, it's getting creative, right? I think that's the other through line for me is getting creative. When I've been homeless in my life, I've sold, $500,000 home to move on a friend's couch, but I slowed down and I got my career trajectory figured out and I had the opportunity to slow down.
That's amazing. I think these kind of life-changing moments are, they're incredibly hard and terrible in the moment, but they're really what make us who we are. And they allow someone like you, what your focus is when you're coming into these companies, it allows you perspective. It allows you to be able to speak from a place of knowledge, of experience, of like, look, this could be worse. This is a very terrible moment. How do we take this apart and work through it?
Yeah.
One of your core messages is that most leaders don't. I love this. Most leaders don't have a technology problem; they have a decision problem, and I 1 billion% agree with this. But what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Oh God, this has been something that's been so like nails on a chalkboard for me. And it's something I feel so
It's
strongly
so
about.
true.
And it's over and over and over. Like if I had, I don't know, like $5 every time a senior executive said, "Oh, that's an IT problem. That's a technology problem," I would be filthy rich. But companies invest in all these tools and they invest in all these platforms and all this technology, but they're still struggling. I mean, millions and millions of dollars of technology. And we see this in digital transformation projects. And I would, my AI friends, my technology friends that are doing these projects would tell me over 80% or more fail. And that number changes all the time. But, it's leaders not being aligned on what matters and not being clear on what they want to invest, not understanding what the risks actually mean to the business, not understanding the outcomes that they're looking for. Like, what do we want to happen after this? And now, even worse with AI, it becomes even more important, right? Because AI is so, 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 so powerful.
And
And
so fast. And so
yeah.
fast. I mean, it's so powerful, but it's so fast too. So the need for making decisions is, I think, even greater now.
So much greater. It amplifies already what exists, right? If you have clear thinking, it will accelerate you. And if you have poor decision making, it's scales too, right? And I think that, the human side of technology and AI is going to matter so much more now than it has ever mattered in the history. And I'm not saying that it didn't matter in the past, but it matters more. Like your emotional intelligence, your self-awareness, the ability to understand people and yourself, super important because AI right now is only processing the data that you feed it, right? It doesn't replace judgment. It won't replace values. It doesn't replace people's intuition. So the leaders that are winning in this next era are the ones who understand both the technology and the human side of it, the EQ side of it, right? And I think about kind of back to these digital transformation projects, a lot of it is falling under the IT departments or the technology divisions, but AI touches every single division. And if we're not sitting around a table, the AI and technology team and the IT department may be implementing this project. They may be leading this project, but they need the oversight from senior leadership. They need the dollars from finance. They need to understand how it's going to affect the people, which affects HR. And so if everybody's not around the table talking about it and figuring it out and working through it, It's never going to work. I was part of an organization that, implemented Copilot. Everybody was getting a Copilot license. So everybody got their Copilot license. Nobody got training. There was no follow up on, are you using it? Are you not using it? And for me, in my case, I didn't even know I had it. I actually had the tool, but nobody told me I had it, right? They were paying for a license for me that nobody ever said, hey, Melissa, you can use this tool now. So I think about all the money that was wasted, A, on my productivity, because I could have used it in meeting minutes and things. B, the cost of me not knowing it, and C, the mistake of not asking all the people that had the license, what do you think? Do you want it? Do you not want it? Simple. It's those things are free, right? Putting, not necessarily fully free, but telling your employees, hey, we bought this for you. Go ahead and try it out. Tell us what you think. Running a questionnaire to everybody that has it to get feedback, right? Because there's going to be some people that don't want to use it. So let them not use it. Why pay for the tool then? And then there's people like me that want to use it, but let me know I could use it.
Right. Yeah, I think the human comment is really where a lot of people, I think AI right now is still really super intimidating for so many people. And also for leaders, like, do we implement it? How do we implement it? My personal opinion, quite frankly, is everyone needs to implement it. And if they don't, they will get left behind. And that's because that's how business is transitioning. A personal opinion, of course, but I think the biggest thing that is interesting to me is the opportunity for how humans are interacting with AI. So in my opinion, it's a good thing as far as being able to allow our teams to be that much more efficient, allowing our teams to get rid of these mundane, mind-numbing tasks that take up time and energy and remove them from what they're really good at. Um, but getting people over the scary part of this is going to take my job, or my job may not look exactly the same, which I think is also scary for people, because even though they may like it more, like, oh, I don't have to do all this other crap. It's going to do it for me, but I get to focus on what I'm really good at. I think even that it's just, the fear of change. Change is scary to people, even if it might be better. And so, and obviously it is taking jobs. It is replacing jobs. We've seen layoffs. We've seen that coming. But I think the thing that people aren't necessarily, that might be afraid of it, that aren't necessarily thinking of, is that yes, it will take some jobs, but it's also going to replace there's going to be some replacement of jobs in different ways with humans that the AI just cannot do, right? That still needs that human piece. And I think also we see that in jobs that are being created that are sitting on top of the AI. Like, look, everybody's company is going to sound the same because AI is creating the same content and it's speaking in the same way. And so we need a human on top of that to be looking at this and does this sound morally what we're in line with? Does this sound human? Does this sound the way people can relate to it? So I think there's a lot of scary parts to it, but I think that's mostly just unknown. It's so unknown that it's like, ooh, what are we doing?
But yeah, and I love that. But I want to pose this to everyone to think, like in my case, I get back hours a week, and I haven't quantified it yet, but I would say it's anywhere between 5 and 15 hours a week. I would say roughly, by using technology. Now, what does that mean for my husband? What does that mean for my 4 children? What does that mean for my employer or myself or my community? Well, it means that I can do more things, which, as a girl with multiple tabs, that could also be dangerous. But it also means if we all use technology and get, let's just say, let's be casual with it, 5 hours a week or 1 hour a week. At minimum, we're getting 52 hours more to do things with the ones we love, with the people we like, with the charities we're passionate about. And in my case, what I notice for me is I have less brain fog. When you have multi-tabs going in your brain, it depletes your energy quicker. It's just like on your phone. You have all these tabs up on your phone, your battery's depleted quicker. It's the same way in our lives.
100%. I mean, I think if you asked anyone, hey, I can give you 1 extra hour every day. We're going to give you 5 extra hours a week. Let's just, use a conservative number, like you said. I think most people would be like, this is fabulous. Like, I want that extra day, that extra hour in my day. Like, that's amazing. So I think that's, again, it's just part of the scary unknown. It's like, this makes so many people more efficient. And again, it gets rid of some of those mundane tasks that are time consumers and allows you really to flourish in what you're really good at and what you're passionate about. Like, whether that's in work and or in other spaces in your life, charities, kids, families, all the things that that are outside of, it's not like we just only have jobs, right? We all have lives as well. So gosh, an extra hour a day, that would be amazing. I think anybody would be welcome that.
But think about, like, I worked a lot in Wisconsin years ago, and there some of the Amish people are still not using cars. They're taking a buggy in town to get whatever they need and taking a buggy back. I think about my life. If I had to take a buggy to the grocery store to get my groceries and to do whatever I had to do, I would have less time. But it's the same thing when the cars came around. People had more time to do other things with their families. We saw the population increase, right? Because people could do things, you know, that they didn't have time for. They had more energy. They didn't have to take a whole day to get to the store to replenish their supplies. They just drove 10 minutes down the road or whatever, an hour down the road.
Yeah, in thinking about, the unknown and the complexity of all that is to come with AI and in general, in complex issues that leaders are dealing with. A lot of leaders struggle when things get complex or unclear. And I think a lot of leaders right now are probably feeling overwhelmed. They're probably struggling, whether that's externally or internally, just because things are so unclear. How do you help people find clarity when everything feels uncertain or overwhelming?
Yeah, and I think that's where the world is at. We're in the gray. We're going to be in the gray for a while. So getting clarity in the gray is going to save years of your life, and it's going to make you a happier person. And so when things are feeling really, really, really overwhelming, it's usually because everything is being treated like it matters equally, right? I think that creates noise. And what I try to do in my life and what I help leaders try to do is to simplify. I simplify every morning before I start my day. I do 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things I need to accomplish, and just some things I've learned throughout the day. Tips or tricks or something I've learned about myself or feelings I had during the day. The next day, I come back and I write 3 things I learned the previous day or 3 things that went well the previous day. Sometimes I'm a big positive quote kind of gal, so I like to write down, quotes that I like or things that I like. So I'll write that. But I do that every day. And I break things into what actually matters right now. Not 100 things, not 700 things, not 50. I have things on my list I've had on my list for 20 years. No joke. My book that I wrote last year, I wrote that on my list in my early 20s. It took me 20 years to get that thing done.
No, you got it done.
I got it done, but it didn't actually matter at that time, right? And so what I do is I think about, okay, what needs to move forward today? Like today, what do I need to move forward? I need to register my kid for school. I need to book a work trip. I need to, clean out my garage, take my car in for the oil change. Like, what needs to move forward today? And what can I ignore today? Is it the end of the world if I don't register my kid today? No. But maybe we need to figure out the things that we can ignore, because there's always something that you can ignore. Like if you're a week later with your oil change, is it going to make a difference? Probably not. And that's where clarity starts to come back to us, it's not about having all the information, it's about filtering your mind better and giving yourself ongoing permission to not carry everything at once. Your job, your husband, your kids, the world, the politics, the this, the that. Clarity is discipline. It's something you practice, especially when things get hard. Like when I'm the most stressed and I'm the most anxious, it is a sign for me to say, okay, I don't have clarity. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling fearful. Feeling these feelings. Now, that's not my employer's fault. That's not my husband's fault. They're my feelings. And I need to unpack them and understand them. Are they real? Are they real feelings? Are they actually, sometimes as a woman, I find sometimes I'm fearful because it's that time of the month, or I'm just having a bad day. And my husband's like, Melissa, we're not going to be homeless. Why are you worrying about this thing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Okay, now I can put that to bed. And now I have more clarity.
Are there any tips or tricks that you use or that you give to leaders that help them find clarity when everything's overwhelming? Are there little tricks that you share with those leaders that you're helping guide?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been overwhelmed in my career, and either I'm a glutton for punishment or that's just kind of the spaces and places that I've lived. And so, what I do, and I'm a big believer in having a relationship with yourself, and I think that that helps us understand burnout. That helps us understand where we're going better. And so, the tips are, in the morning when I'm doing my journaling, how am I feeling? Sometimes I'll just write a number. Sometimes my scales are different. Like maybe one day it's 1 to 10, maybe one day it's 1 to 50, maybe it's 1 to 1,000. But I write a number, and then I'll occasionally flip my book and see all my numbers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my numbers are 4. Oh, that means something's off. I have too much on my plate, and I need to unpack it, or I need to get information if I'm overthinking things are on my plate, if I'm not sleeping well. So I'll go and ask a trusted advisor. My husband's my trusted advisor. My friends are my trusted advisors. I'll ask him, I'll be like, do you think I have too much on my plate? And he literally he laughs at me every single time I ask him that, because usually I do.
He's like always.
Yeah, I laugh. Like this year I promised my husband, he's like, 2 things, Melissa. 2 things this year, Melissa. And I'm like, I know. 2 things. Just 2 things. And then I'll come up to him and I'll be like, babe. He's like, no. he already
I'm going to
knows
say
I'm
no
gonna do
already.
He already knows I'm going to do it to him. But I think that's how we get clarity, right? Like I think when we understand how we're feeling, like if you're not sleeping, if you don't have the energy, if you're grabbing really sugary foods all the time and you're putting on weight, now there may be a health challenge, there may be a medical condition, or in my case, you may be going through perimenopause. But if there's not, that's a sign that we need to step back, slow down. What am I focusing on? Like there's times in my career where I had a child where I had to not travel around the world and to slow the travel down and to just focus on sleeping. Like that was my entire focus, was to get 8 hours of sleep. You can't have 100 of the focuses at one time because it dilutes the ability to do anything well. And so when you put it on paper, like sometimes I'll put on paper like everything I want to accomplish. Like I'll just write until I can't write anymore. And then I'll go back and I will check in with my gut and my instinct, which one feels easy, like which one's a 10. Like tell me which one. One year when I started the podcast, it was a 10. I knew I had to do it and I just started. I had no idea how to start it. I had no idea what I was doing. Oftentimes my friends that were on my podcast at the beginning, they're like, why are you so nervous to interview me? Like you've known me
You
for
know
20
me.
years. Like I don't even understand this. So that was my focus, is just getting better. But I didn't have 50 things. Keep the same list. I have lists from like high school still. I
Wow.
have lists about doing things from years ago and journals that I wrote from years ago. And they just weren't pressing at the time. I'm in a season right now of, starting a new job, focusing on the job and focusing on my family. We've had some significant changes in my family and I have to focus on them. And so it doesn't mean that I don't want to write my second book or do more keynote speaking. It just means it's not a 10 priority right now. And so I have to let that take the back seat.
Well, you've made decisions in your career where you chose integrity over short-term gain, even when it meant walking away from big opportunities, and that's kind of what you were just saying. So how do you make those decisions, and what has that taught you about leadership specifically?
This one is so, so big for me. And I hope it's so big for others that are listening to this. Integrity is so important. And I think that, I work in an industry that is gambling, gaming. It's 24-hour, it's vices. And, last year I walked away from a job, very large salary. And on paper, it made sense. I'm like, oh my gosh, this money's going to put my kids in better schools. It's going to, do all these things for me. But the company's values and where they were going were not aligned with mine. And I knew if I stayed, I would be building something that didn't reflect the authentic side of me. And I wanted to continue my learning and my growing. It was a really hard decision because there's a lot of comfort in staying in a place that and that the money is going to come in. There's security around it, but there's also a cost. And there's been times in my career, if I was sitting here right today talking to younger Melissa, what would she tell Melissa in her first job, getting her first job, starting her first job? I would also say there's a cost with staying. There's a cost with staying places you're not meant to be. And that cost may show up today and it may show up years later that you have to unpack. It's how you feel. It's how you lead. In what you're building. So for me, the decisions came down to, do I want short-term gains or long-term alignment? And I chose alignment. And what I've learned from this is the opportunity you're walking away from often defines you more than the one you take. And I think for me, and I will say, I have a supportive counsel around me. I had many, the job I just recently took, I had 5 other jobs at the same time. This job was the smallest company with the least amount of pay with the smallest title. And I took it because the company's products and values were in line with my mission. I even turned down a 7-figure job. And people were like, what are you thinking? But what I was thinking is the job didn't align with me. The founder was emotional, right? I'm like, if he's emotional today when I'm trying to sort this through with my family, he's going to be emotional later. And I'm stuck in that environment.
And probably all the time, quite frankly.
Right. Right.
you
right.
know.
Yeah. And I think, integrity is really important. Are you the kind of person, if there's $1,000 on the table and nobody knows, would you take it or would you leave it there? And that's something between you and the mirror. But for me, I want to show up in my life and my world, sharing my authentic heart with my husband, my authentic heart with my children, my authentic heart with my friends, my authentic heart with my staff and my employer and everybody around me. And some people have hurt me. I've been deeply hurt and deeply betrayed by people. I've let people, live on my couch and I put them, through school, and I've had people rob me. I've had people do all kinds of terrible things. I've clothed people who lost home. I mean, I could sit here all day and talk about this. And people often say, why do you stop? I say because the right ones stay. And I learn something every time I go through these things. And I get stronger and I get wiser and I get more courageous. But that I don't lose the lesson. I don't ever lose the lesson for the things I go through. And I've been through the ringer many times. And it's such an empowering place to be in your life when you could step off the hamster wheel and choose for you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's not everybody gets to experience that, getting a 7-figure offer that you now have to make a moral decision about. But I think what's interesting about that is you don't really know how you're going to respond until you're put in that position. So it's kind of like you spend your career building up and steadying those let's say moral compasses internally as you go through your career, so that when you do get to that spot, some people will go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. But it's like, no, I made the right decision, because that was going down a path I wasn't interested in. It didn't align with me, with who I am. And it would have taken me in a whole other space that would have been contradictory to who I am and what I care about. So I think that's really interesting. And I do think that, making these small decisions throughout our career, really, again, give us more sense of direction, or a confidence in making those choices when we get to those tough decisions. It's not like, what am I doing? It's like, you know what? I know that's the right way to go. I don't want to let this podcast go by without you talking all about all the things you're building right now, your podcast, Maverick Test, all the book, all the things. So where can people find you? What are you most focused on right now? How can people connect with you and dive deeper into your work? Give us all the information about all things Melissa.
Yes. So right now I'm building something very intentional with all of my heart, all the things I've learned. And I find, a lot of times people are like, how did you learn that? Like, how do you know that? And now, I have all these years of things that I've learned, and now I want to pay it forward. And at the center of all that is my podcast, the Executive Connect podcast. And there's a few pillars inside of that. And the first one is around leadership. And I started talking about leadership because when I started very young in civil engineering, I didn't have information about burnout or my mindset or dealing with difficult people or, any of those kind of building a brand, writing a resume. Like I didn't have any of those things. I had to work my, tushy off or make the mistakes to figure them out. And so, the first pillar with the podcast around leadership. The second is around decision making, high stakes negotiation. What do you do with your money once you make it? So second being alternative investment. So for me, I've made millions and I've lost tens of millions of dollars because I didn't have the right tools or the experience to know how not to sell all my stocks when the market crashes. So when the market crashed, I thought it'd be smart to sell everything so I didn't lose everything, because nobody told me that that's a terrible time to sell your stocks. So I talk kind of second is alternative investment. So when you make the money and you learn all the leadership skills, where do you put it? And so about wealth and alternative investments. The third kind of being longevity. I think health is something I see a lot of people in our world struggling with right now. And so I talk about longevity, how to, sleep better. I've had this sleep doctor on who's also been on Oprah, how to supplement better, all the things around longevity. And then faith, I think no matter what religion you believe in, no matter what you believe, the thing is to believe in something. And then, really just building a life that actually works for you. It's all about longevity and all the things: health, wealth, work, family, all the things. But it doesn't kind of stop there. Sorry, you were going to say
No,
something.
I was going to say, and just so everybody knows, you don't have to be, dramatically scribbling this down. Everything will be in the show notes. So all of Melissa's information that she's talking about right now will be available for you to click on and find very easily after the show. So I just want to make that point clear.
I love it. So I have been one of those people that look to certain personality tests to learn more about me, like the Strengths Finder or any of the kind of personality traits that are, or personality tests that are out there. And so I created a personality test called the Maverick Test, and it helps people understand how they're wired, how they think, how they make decisions, where they thrive. And there's kind of four versions of this test. So the first version is out there on my website, executiveconnectexperience.com. It'll tell you, are you an alchemist? Are you, whatever kind of maverick you are, it gives you kind of that vanilla version of who you are. The second version of that will unpack it deeper. And so there'll be a number of different kind of versions of this. I've got version 1 out there. And so a lot of the Maverick Test is inside a book that I co-authored called Renaissance, Redefining Success for Modern Mavericks. It's really about redefining success on your terms, and it's something that I continue to do in my life, my whole life, every piece of my life. I'm redefining myself and redefining what I want and what dreams I want and what I want to accomplish and how I want to accomplish them. So that book is out there. The second book will be out soon. And then I'm doing executive kind of workshops that bring all of this together about wealth and health and leaderships and, the human firewall. I do a lot of different workshops because, really the through line for me is longevity and all facets of your life. So you're not just building something fast, you're building something that lasts. And whether it's your career or your health or your relationships or, your financial life, all of it, because I think that's really the point of success. If it's not sustainable, I would question, why are you building it? And so everything I'm building is really around that and helping people think long term and building things more intentionally. And we talked earlier about clarity. Like if you don't know where you're going, you're just kind of letting life pass you by. And I would argue that our life right now is moving faster and it's getting more gray. And so you need to take the reins of your life and figure out, what do you want? And, if you're a single mom or you're a married woman, communicate that. Communicate that with your children. Communicate that with your husband. Communicate that with your friends. I have several accountability partners in my life. And when things get really stressful, I call them. I'm like, hey, what do you think? Am I being this or should I do with that? And I get their feedback. And, several of my friends will be like, Melissa, what are you thinking? Why are you doing that? And then I'll have to step back and relook at my pros and cons of decisions I'm making. And so really it's all the things. It's my Executive Connect experience is podcast, books, workshops. I do keynote speaking. And really all of it is heart-centered, paying it forward to, leave the world a better place.
I love it. And again, we'll put everything in the notes so you can easily find all of her stuff. I love this Maverick test. I'm gonna have to take the Maverick test. What am I? I love these tests. I could do all of the tests. I think it depends on the mood you're in when you take it also. But I love these. I love that you created your own. That is so cool. And I can't wait to experience it. Okay.
I should mention too, I've even
Yes.
totally forgot to mention this. I started a newsletter as well.
Ooh.
And so all these like tips and tricks and tidbits are going to, like all the compilation of things I've learned is going to be in this newsletter. So that's also on the website. Sorry about
Ooh,
that.
we love that. And we'll make sure that's included. But I love a good newsletter that's connecting people with the right folks. We have an INTS newsletter. I love connecting people with your book, what you're doing, or what other nonprofits that we support are doing. So I love a good newsletter that's chock full of information. Ours comes out once a month because I don't want to do too many. But I just think when it's quality information, they are so handy to have and to be able to refer to when you're like, oh, what was that? What was that great thing she mentioned in her newsletter? One of the things that you shared with me was that for your very first, I think this is going to crack people up, but shock people. And I love this so much, but one of your very first speaking engagements, you literally stood with your back to the audience because you were so nervous. And I am so sure that most people that are listening to this or watching this are like, what? Or that know you are like shocked by this information. But what changed for you? When did speaking become something that you actually loved and not something that you were hiding or shying away from?
I'll take you back to your first question. So I think about this kind of gregarious young 4 year old out in the world that was asking adults at dinner parties very peculiar questions. A lot of people don't like that. And what that did for me young is it kind of flipped me into an introverted person. I know, hard to believe. I was the girl in the networking events that would collect her food and kind of stand over here and like look around and watch people. And if somebody came up to me, I'd talk. But, I would say part of my life, I was an introvert. I was not confident in myself. And so when I was asked to speak, I first of all thought I was going to wet myself multiple times. I think like my nerves were so like shot. I think I went to the bathroom 5 times before I had to speak. But yeah, my first speaking engagement, I literally stood with my back to the audience, which for the record, I would never recommend starting your speech with your
I feel like
back
it would
to
be
the
so
audience.
terrifying if you did actually turn around once in a while. You'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah, and it's funny because, looking at it now as a person who speaks a lot, I would be like, does this person not know what they're talking about when their backs to us? Why are they nervous? But I was nervous. I did not feel ready. I was so in my head, like trying to remember every single sentence that I had. I had stage fright. And what changed for me was definitely not overnight. The second time I did it, I was just as nervous, but it was gradual, right? It was gradual. It's like going to the gym and you're lifting a weight. Your muscles aren't big. You might be sore the next day, but it stopped making, it really, like, how do I explain this? I was just honest with the audience, back to integrity and honesty. I just said, hey, look, I'm super nervous up here. I'm about to wet myself. I just need to start my speech with my back to you because I know my stuff. I just am not comfortable standing in front of you. And I'm, a funny person. I make things fun and funny. And so I said to the audience, I'm like, yeah, I'm imagining all of you in your underwear is what I read. Speakers should imagine so they're not intimidated. But I really made it less about me. And I stopped thinking about how I sounded or how I looked or if I, hit every single word in my, script that I was trying to tell them. And I started thinking about the person in the audience. What did they need me? What did they need to hear from me? Or what did they need me to say that could, make them move on something, like getting them unstuck, kind of what I was thinking about. And it really became the focus of the speech. So I like completely went off the script, and that was like everything changed for me. I was trying to be like this perfectly organized, spoken Melissa, getting, everything right and, performing and doing everything perfect, making sure my hair was perfect. But that's when everything changed for me, because it wasn't about me performing for them. It was about me being authentic and me having an impact on them. And so over time, I started to really love it because I could see the connection in the audience and I could see people shifting. And that's what made it all worth it to me. And there's been times where I'm speaking and, everybody's on their phone, scrolling or texting, and I'll walk up to like the person in the audience. So if I'm speaking and you're on your phone, just know that I have been known to like walk out and off stage and like sit down to people and ask them. And
One way to get people off their phones.
totally true. Or I'll say something really like bogus and off record to see if I can get people. I think I've said once, like, oh my God, there's a fire in the room. And everybody would look up and I'm like, see, got your attention, like joking. But I do stuff like that to get kind of people to pay attention.
We are wrapping down to our last question, but and it's not that serious. We have a series called our WHIP series, which stands for Women in Power. And but power can mean many things to many different people. So when you hear that phrase, what does being a whip or being a woman in power actually mean to you?
I think it's about becoming. Like, none of us, I don't believe I'm ever going to be finished. I'm never going to be finished. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm always going to be in process. And to me, power was never about a title. I was 4 years old carrying my son around, or, you know, early 20s managing a $500 million project. It was never about the position I was in. It's my ability to make decisions that shape my life and then stand behind myself. Like, I've taken, wrong mistakes. I've pivoted when I shouldn't have, or I've did that when I shouldn't have. But I learned from them, right? I learned from the bad choices I made. I've given people keys to my house thinking they're trustworthy to come home and, very expensive things missing. So I learned not to give people a key to my house unless I trusted them. And so the strongest, leaders and people I know, they're still evolving. They're still learning. They're still questioning. They're still building. So I guess it becomes, I guess it isn't about arriving so much as in power or somewhere. It's about, for me at least, it's about the courage to keep becoming who you're meant to be and keep making mistakes. Like, I always make mistakes, always, all the time. But I'm learning from them, and I'm realizing I'm getting better with the choices because I have the courage to do them, because I know what I'm capable of, and I have people behind me that are loyal and helpful. And if I was in another country today and I needed something, I have a handful of people that would send me whatever I need, or fly on a plane to come get me, or drop money, or whatever. But those relationships took me a while to build. I didn't have those young because I was gullible and I didn't understand that. And so I had to learn it. So power, I think, to me, it's about arriving somewhere and never giving up on what your goals and dreams are.
And hopefully we're all becoming and we're all learning from that becoming, right? Thank you so much for being on today. I'm so excited for the women that are listening to hear you and to get to be woven into the fabric of all things Melissa, and the network that you're building and all of the content that you're building. It's so powerful and interesting, and I'm so happy to have you on, and thank you for being on. And definitely, you guys, hit up the website, get some merch, look at the podcast, find the content of all Melissa's things, of all INTS things. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you. That's a wrap on today's episode of Carrie, It's Not That Serious. If this conversation resonated, subscribe and share it with a whip, a woman in power in your life. You can find more conversations, more community, and all the fun INTS merch you love at itsnotthatserious.com. We're building something meaningful here, and I'm so glad you're a part of it. Until next time, remember, it's not that serious.